Ooh, I can't wait to see what's coming up in this rematch, guys. That is going to be epic. Hello, all you esports fans out there. It's your All-American caster duo, ready for some epic League of Legends. I'm Devin PiraTechnics Young. Of course, this is Christy Ender Frierson. What's up, man?
Come from the USA, baby. Los Angeles. Bringing you EU League of Legends, though. That's the important part.
Yeah, this is the important imports.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not about us. It's about these two teams because they've had so much history, so much recent history. And now, whoever wins this, they're in sole possession of 4th place, top 4 spot. Definitely nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, it's very important because the other team they're tied with for 4th right now is Sjokz. They go up against G2 later today, so it is very likely almost that the winner of this game will have that sole possession and be able to get themselves that much closer to the playoffs.
All right, we're starting off on the picks and bans. As you mentioned, they're not just looking for that 4th place spot, looking to go up 7 and 5 as opposed to 6 and 6. Don't want to drop down to those mid sections of the table. Heimerdinger's off, as well as Aatrox.
And of course, in this draft, I think a lot of the questions on the side of Vitality have been, what type of champion is Attila going to play? We've seen a few games on marksmen like the Lucian not work out that great compared to when he's on the mages in the bottom lane. And if you're trying to go against a team that's deadlocked with you in the standings, we want to see Attila on something he can carry with.
Well, we've already seen the Heimerdinger banned away. That was he was one of the first ones to actually bring it out. Obviously, he got upended by Yarna doing it as well, but it's been more or less a staple of the bottom lane. Not a chance this time. Also, the Kindred ban. Roccat been clearly paying attention. Kikis took that champ yesterday.
Yeah, so Kikis will have to try his hand at a new jungler in the EU LCS. Nocturne is the ban that screams out to me immediately here on the red side. One of those very common ones, and without banning that away, you almost expect Roccat to pick that up immediately from Memento.
Well, it's 20 seconds for them to try and decide. Memento, of course, is the guy that Roccat looked to get ahead early on in the game, and you called it. It's locked.
I mean, when you don't ban it on the red side, you can basically guarantee it's going to be locked in. That's actually going to be Memento's first game on this champion of the split. Of course, with so many bans thrown his way, he usually has to go on to some different champions a little bit lower on the totem pole. But that's a very scary thing to give against one of the best early game junglers in the EU LCS. Roccat build their compositions to let Memento carry, and now he's on the best available jungler.
Question then on the minds is, what do they get for it in response? We have the Galio and the Swain locked in. We saw Galio yesterday for Jiizuké, and it really didn't impress that much.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because we hadn't seen Jiizuké, I believe, play that Galio before that match. It did its job in a lot of situations, but wasn't a standout performance from him out of the middle lane. The Swain, though, very likely does mean mage in the bottom lane for Attila, so I personally really like that part of the first rotation.
Now, it looks like for Roccat, they're going to be balancing out the jungle pickup with the bottom lane. It's easy to forget that with Norskeren's crazy playmakers, he made Braum a household name last split when he made his debut in the European LCS. So we will get the good old bodyguard composition. Lucian, of course, synergizing very well with the double tap and the Braum passive.
And of course, over in the LCK, we've seen Nocturne actually get through the ban phase a little bit more often. Those teams typically look to Trundle as the answer. The jack of all trades out of the jungle can soak up some damage on the front line. The pillar does synergize very well alongside the Swain as well to activate the passive and yank enemies back on in there. So I don't think Vitality are upset with the fact they gave over Nocturne. They had this prepared coming in to answer with the Trundle.
The question is, will they be able to execute it? That has always been, now with Vitality falling down the standings a little bit, are they going to be able to execute in that crucial phase of the game, the early game, where both of these teams look to secure leads?
And I'm already expecting both teams to play pretty heavily around their bottom lane, specifically on the side of Roccat. You draft Lucian Braum to look for kills, look for ganks once Memento hits level 6, but of course you have to do that against the Galio ultimate as well, which offers a lot of protection for the side of Vitality. You just get into some of those fun interactions where when Nocturne pops down the darkness, you can't ult for 6 seconds as the Galio.
It does make life a little bit more difficult. And speaking of making life harder, Vitality, they banned away the Gnar. Now, that was an old favorite of Prophet. It used to be the meme, just give him the Gnar and he'll work some wonders. Roccat, for their side, focusing more on the support pool. Alistair banned away. Now, of course, also the Pyke. So it's up to see what Jactroll does. He could always go back to the Tahm Kench if he really wanted to.
It's definitely an option for him. I know that Vitality loves running the Swain plus Pyke in the bottom lane, so a little unfortunate that got taken away. You usually like to pair Swain with some hard crowd control effects in the bottom lane.
There it is.
Yeah, that is pretty hefty all-in. Once Vitality hit level 6 in the bottom lane, they can definitely try to coordinate some ganks with roams out of Jiizuké's Galio once the time comes.
All right, so the Rakan being locked up for Jactroll. Would you believe that he hasn't played at this split?
That's a little surprising, because Jactroll's usually the guy you look for making plays on your team. He loves picks like the All-Star and the Pyke, so that would surprise me.
Looks like on Rocket's side, they're going back to Bird in the mid lane. The Azir comes in here, and this is kind of an old Blanc favorite as well. Nice hover, by the way, Norskeren. We saw LCK earlier.
Timo got played earlier in the LCK as a bot lane carry. We're not going to get it today, but oh my god, that was crazy.
Yeah, Norskeren is the guy that would just like, oops,
baby.
My finger slipped, right? But it's the Vladimir. This is what Prophet has been making a name for himself on this split.
Especially during the first few weeks, it was almost first pickable for Roccat. They always wanted to get Prophet on that champion. In past weeks, it's fallen a little bit down in priority to picks like the Mundo, but after some nerfs, now we get to see Roccat on a playmaker, on a damage dealer in the late game, which is certainly interesting considering we now know that he's one of the guys making the shot calls throughout the game, gonna realize who gets the resources and where.
The Kled's locked in. And I know your eyes were lighting up too here, Ender, because we were talking about this. What symbolizes Vitality as a team? The 5-man run down the mid lane and try to kill everyone as fast as you can. It is the Kled. This is like thematically perfect.
And see, here's where I'm not exactly sure where that Kled's gonna go, because we've seen it thrown into some other roles around the world, seen a little bit of mid lane Kled over in the LCK. You expect it to be top lane and for Kikis to play around it early on, maybe try to shut down this Vladimir if they want to change up their strategy, because right now it looks like they have a couple different lanes they could play through, and they're definitely gonna have to just all in on one and forget about the other.
Now remember, Vitality have also gotten up to some trickery as well with their compositions in the past. We all remember the Darius going mid, Cabochard running that to try and get himself a better laning matchup. But it looks like as the timer is ticking down, we will have the Kled, at least in name, up towards the top side. So Ender, I want to pose it to you as the coaches are shaking hands. Who do you think takes the win in this draft?
Ooh, it's a good question, because I think at different points in this game, teams have very different strengths. For Vitality, it's about mid-game team fighting. You've got the run it down mid with the Kled. You want to charge on in there and look for fights with 4 bruisers to beef up your front line. But if the game drags on long enough, like we're sort of used to seeing when Roccat play games, they have one of the longer game timers in the ULCS. The scaling of Vladimir and Azir might just be too much for Vitality to deal with.
That is always the risk you run. Now, Vitality, they've made a couple of shifts here. Kikis once more in the jungle. We saw him once already earlier this week coming in for Gilius. Will this changeup be enough to get Vitality back on track to victory, or will they be destined to fall to Roccat once again? It does seem like Roccat, sometimes the Vitality kryptonite.
Yeah,
right now 1-2 is their record against them this year.
At the start of the split as well, it was Vitality coming off of a 2-0 week. We thought the meta suited them. They were looking so strong on all these bottom lane mages. And then you had this barn burner of a game against Roccat where Vitality had the lead. Roccat were able to stall out and turn around in the end for one of the bigger upsets at the start of the split.
Well, it certainly was the case. It's always been an exciting matchup between these two. It'll stay exciting. You can take a look up in the top left corner. The first dragon that'll be on the Rift will be the Infernal as well. And it's exciting for so many reasons. They are incredibly close. These two teams right now, it's not just that they're 6-5. It's that whoever wins this takes 4th place. Pending what the Schalke results are later on in the day, that's incredibly impressive, especially for a team like Roccat.
And it would also put them only a game behind Fnatic and G2, of course, with more games to come on through during the day, but certainly trying to make a case for who is that 4th place team, because if you can sort of solidify that in week 6, week 7, before we get down to those last few games, then you don't have to worry about maybe even dropping out of that playoff race in the last few weeks.
And looking back at, the history angle of it as well, Roccat as an organization, this is massive for these guys. They've had a couple of rough years. I got to go way back in my mind to find out when they were in 4th place. You want to know when that was, Ender?
When was it, Pyra?
That was all the way back in 2014. The all-Polish lineup. They had Jankos, they had Zazis, they had Seliver. That's when Roccat were like a 3rd and 4th place team at the end of a split.
I was still in high school, man. Come on.
You youngin'. These kids these days. But yeah, that was Roccat. Now they've made playoffs last split. That was obviously the road to them really stepping things up in this one. But take it from an old man. It's nice to see Roccat really getting back to the form that they were once upon a time. Jiizuké goes in on Blanc to start things off. Just a couple love taps in that mid lane.
Yeah, the Azir is another one of those picks we just haven't seen in a really long time here, back since the spring split. Then with the game timers getting faster and faster and faster, we saw significantly less of that champion. I do sort of like it against a melee-heavy composition on the side of Vitality, though. Having that Emperor's Divide, having that wall to get those melee champions off of you and buy some range for you and the other carries on the side of Roccat is going to be a strong tool.
Ooh, Kikis already in Memento's jungle here. Just the red buff versus the double buff, so Memento's already forced out. This is key. This is what we were talking about, the early jungle pressure being so important.
And this is something Kikis did a lot of yesterday on the Kindred, as Jiizuké's taken some wild trades there in the mid lane, but he was very aggressive in his pathing, invading to get marks on the Kindred, sometimes to his benefit, sometimes he got caught out and punished, but right now, because his lanes in both top and mid have priority, he's allowed to get this pressure off and try to slow down Memento's journey to level 6.
And this is the plus side of having a changed jungler, moving things around a little bit. You don't know necessarily what to expect, because this guy is not the same jungler you've been watching over the course of the split. You can't necessarily prep for this as well. So Memento finding out the hard way that he can't always have the easy jungle he wants.
Of course, what you saw right there, the Ghost Poro getting bumped out of the way, one of the runes that was changed on this patch to give you bonus adaptive stats when you place it inside of the enemy jungle. So we're going to be seeing a little bit more of that for champions that go into the domination tree, because of course the better option for a long time was Zombie Ward, and that got changed that your own wards, when they expired, no longer give you that Zombie Ward to go ahead and pop up. So Ghost Poro all the way, Pyro.
Yeah, so Ghost greater than zombies is what I got out of that, which is, you know, if you're going by movie trends, then I'll believe you.
Really, I feel like zombies have a much higher success rate.
When's the last one you saw?
I've not seen either.
I thought you had something. All right, never mind. But let's talk a little bit more about this bot lane, especially with regards to the supports. We talked about playmaking on Jactroll. Norskeren is definitely one of those guys that also does a lot of it. We'll get into it in just a moment, because Jactroll wants to jump in, just does a little extra damage onto HeaQ. But they actually share quite a few champions between the two of them.
Yeah, it's typically been all those playmaking supports, although Roccat looking for a play down bot side now.
Looks like it. Attila is forced to flash away. Memento in plain sight coming through, pre-level 6, and that is a quick couple of summoners burn, which means level 6. You called it. Bot lane focus is going to be the name of the game.
Yeah, Memento hardly had to do anything. All he had to do was show up, say, hey, Norskeren, HeaQ, you do all the work.
He's a spooky ghost. I told you, dude.
It is true. He's very scary. Nightmares and all that good stuff. But now, especially when that level 6 rolls around, you better believe the all-in threat from Memento is going to be so much stronger in the bottom lane, and they will be looking for a kills in a few minutes.
Yep. Could be a little bit rough for Attila and Jactroll without their flashes. For the time being, still holding strong and actually have the CS advantage over HeaQ. That may not last a whole lot longer. Jiizuké once again continue to take these big trades as he gets the taunt off on the tip of the proc. Blanc is having a little bit of a hard time. We have to talk a little about top too, because Prophet has actually been hanging tough against Cabochard, who picked this Kled into him.
Yeah, you know, the Vladimir typically doesn't have the strongest early laning plays. He can typically try to sustain through it against a lot of top lane tanks because of his range and, of course, the healing on his Q. But Kled is always a champion that can force those all-ins onto you, and one of the unique interactions in this 1 versus 1 is that the bear trap on the rope will persist even if Prophet goes into the pool and still land that CC. So there's definitely some all-in threat from the Kled that Vladimir typically doesn't have to worry about.
Yeah, a little less safe than he thought now. Pre-level 6, of course, too. He can't even scare him back with the Hemo play. Kikis once again to his old tricks here, Memento. There's a level difference right now. Kikis just keeps forcing him back and stealing his Wolf Camp away. He's going to need some help from Blanc.
And he gets the smite too. Was just waiting for that to come back off of cooldown. Really nicely done out of him, and it's only going to get worse here for Memento, because right now Jiizuké just hit level 6. That means whenever Kikis walks into the enemy jungle, there can be this Galio there to support him. Sort of makes sense when you consider how Kikis was playing yesterday with a Galio on his team as well. It was all about these early game invades to try and deny CS from his opposition.
Yeah, now he was playing the Kindred, of course, and he ended up scaling pretty nicely when they needed to make the comeback. But let's talk a little bit about Kikis' prior performance, because coming back into the LCS, Kikis is a guy that definitely gets a lot of people to perk up, and he didn't look great until the very end, but he won when it counted.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfect game out of him. That was nice. Attempted interrupt from Kikis right there, but still, being an extra voice to try and change things up later in the game is, again, Vitality walk into this jungle because they have the timer on the red buff. This is so good out of Kikis. I love it.
Yeah, the key stats that I think out of the ones we just saw has to be the gold differential, because look at what he's doing right now to Memento. He's kept him on level 5. Of course, Kikis on the experience bar a little higher, and he's even going to manage to force the Emperor's Divide out of Blanc. This guy is consistently a pain in the side of Roccat.
Did secure the red buff, though, for Memento as Jactroll, Kikis, they continue to play aggressively. This is what you expect out of a Vitality team. The key difference, though, seems to be when Gilius plays on the team, it's Gilius playing through his lanes, looking for level 2 ganks, trying to constantly apply pressure to the enemy laners, whereas Kikis is all about finding the 1v1 battles against Memento so far.
Speaking of 1v1 battles, Cabochard's level 6 to Prophet 7, and he still forced that one. Actually took Prophet down to the equivalent of his health bar.
Yeah, and continuing on this top lane matchup, we said, there's a little bit of all-in threat on the Kled, but specifically, it's windows of burst power where he can use his W to get a lot of consecutive auto attacks down.
We gotta go back to that jungle fight. Hold on a second. We're watching HeaQ and Norskeren double time onto Jactroll, but meanwhile, it was nearly kills across the map here. We saw Summoner's Burnt, Kikis forced to flash, and now Cabochard backing away without Skarl. All right, so break down what just happened.
Yeah, so I'm going to look specifically at that jungle from Kikis because, again, it's him trying to invade. The key difference, though, was that Jiizuké looked for a recall timer at that same exact moment, so he didn't have that same support and ended up costing him his flash, which should make it much more difficult for him to re-enter that jungle in the coming minutes.
Absolutely. And I wanted to touch on this as well with the champion choices that Prophet has made. Talked about his Vladimir being one of his more famous ones recently. Actually, the game that he pretty much made his name for it on was the last time they met up against Vitality, where at the very end, he just goes in, the Hemoplague's huge, and then basically Blanc just cleans everybody up on Araneae. Everyone remembers that one. Yeah,
Prophet isn't a guy that's going to dumpster you in lane, but he's a guy that will deal so much damage in those later game team fights. Cabochard has to be careful, though, because Memento is hanging around
level 6.
That paranoia.
And here we go. Goes in on it. Pops the Skarl. Immediately forces the flash, the pocket pistol. That's not going to save you, my friend. And it's first blood over to Prophet.
Excellently done. And we know, hey, Prophet's the one calling the shots behind the scenes. He's like, hey, Memento, get on over here. Cabochard keeps going for these aggressive trades. Is absolutely able to punish.
So the gold game was actually in favor of Vitality up until that point, and now it's a 500 difference. And it looks like it's about to be more. Roccat want to accelerate this game. Teleport from HeaQ coming up to the top side. This will result in a tower trade, but Roccat have got the jump on it.
The only thing Roccat have to be worried about is that there's an Infernal Drake on the bottom side, so they do have the tempo advantage, but after this, we would usually like to see them walk into a Rift Herald. There's not a Rift Herald up, though. It's only 9 minutes and 40 seconds into the game, so Vitality should be able to come out positive on this trade.
Interesting decision, too, because Roccat had to have known that this was going to happen one way or the other, and they opted to take it anyways.
It's curious, but I think what it comes down to is the fact that HeaQ's been struggling a little bit in this bottom lane. Even though the duo on Rockat's side have taken advantageous trades, the range from Swain in the early game seems to have gotten a little bit of an advantage in the CS department.
He's not the only one been struggling, too. You just got to take a look at some of the CS differentials. Obviously, Memento helping get the first blood was huge as Blanc tries for the Shurima shuffle, and he does manage to find Jiizuké, who can't justice punch his way over the wall. But it looks like, well, Prophet's still chasing on. A little help from Kikis in the pillar means he can't go any further. Yeah, Rocket's lanes have been struggling a little bit this game.
Yeah, there were just a few seconds left on the Hemoplague from Prophet. Otherwise, had it been up, very likely could have forced a flash there out of Jiizuké. As it stands, doesn't end up being too poor there on the side of Vitality. But since Roccat gave up that Infernal Drake, we asked the question, how are they going to sort of go back after Cabochard in the top lane? Because they very specifically wanted this turret. They wanted to keep this guy on an island where he wouldn't have protection if a gank came in.
Yeah, Camp Cabo has definitely been a successful strat over the years for people trying to take on Vitality. It's the issue runs into when you have too many people focusing him and the rest of the team is just 4v0.
But if you can get a Vladimir ahead, oh boy, that is some damage. When we get into these fights later on, and he already got that first blood, went very defensive in his itemization. He wants to make sure he doesn't give over any of his advantage, but you don't really need to build all that much DPS if you're always going for 2v1s.
Oh, that's a good point. Having Memento in your back pocket is certainly going to help, and I think he was happy for something to do considering Kikis was just stealing all of his jungle. But now the focus is closer to the mid lane. Jactroll coming in. He's got everything back up. Quickness just waiting to pop it here as Norskeren, Blanc, and Prophet hiding in the brushes. Roccat are wise to this one. Will they take this fight in the mid game? Let's see. Prophet, he goes through with the pool, but that's going to end instantly. 3-man knockup, and Paranoia's coming in, but this might be a little too late as Memento hovering around the backside, not going to find an opening. And here comes the Kled on the charge. Norskeren, the rest of Roccat in full retreat. Under tower, Vitality still go as Attila looks to finally finish off Prophet. Does not find it, but in the Demonic Ascension, he forces Memento back, and that is another taunt. Memento blown to pieces. Prophet trying to make something out of nothing.
Just one more.
Jiizuké finally is going to fall. It ends up being a 2-for-1 trade. But Vitality, unbridled aggression as always.
Yeah, I mean, it's 12 minutes. Cue the plays in the mid lane from Vitality. They bring the whole crew, run it straight down mid underneath that turret, but they're not in over kills. They're getting them against Roccat.
True, and now the gold game is even. The biggest difference right now is going to be that Dragon and, of course, this Rift Herald that's soon to be picked up. But Roccat don't want to leave this alone. They just don't have a choice about it because no one's near it.
It's tough, too, for Roccat because they almost went in for that fight. We had Prophet coming around the flank thinking maybe they could take that advantageously, but it's a Vladimir, it's an Azir, very heavy on the scaling department, and it was also the quicker rotations, it looked like, from Attila in the side lane, and this engage right at the start from Jactroll on the playmakers combined with the eventual hero's entrance to burn those stopwatches was very important to allow Vitality to press forward for this dive underneath the turret, where they can tank for so long because Kled can de-aggro with his passive.
I don't think he can de-aggro here, unfortunately. He looks pretty dead, but let that not interrupt your point.
I mean, he can de-aggro into the turret, but not in a 1 versus 3 situation. See, he was just tanking damage in that last fight. 69 DPS overall.
Hey, he hit an ult.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it worked, you know.
But you know what? He did his job.
Here's the thing, though. Like this is where Vitality were stronger. You talked about it in the pick and ban phase. This is not only where they like to fight, this is where their composition is strong, is going to be in these mid-game fights. And Memento, all he could really do was turn the lights off at that point and hope that Vitality would get scared and run away. But Vitality is not a team that's going to be afraid of the dark. They're just going to keep throwing punches at you. Yeah,
they will continue to fight as Roccat, in similar form, grouping up 4, even 5 members towards this bottom lane as Prophet is going to be ready to rotate. The second Vitality look to stop this one.
Okay, Kikis is here to join Jactroll, and Cabochard's up as well. He doesn't have his ultimate available. This tower's going to fall. They need to leave right now as no shove back happens. The double teleport, though, and now Roccat, they may have overstayed their welcome just a bit. Here comes the Kled, going for the charge. That is a lot of burst damage. Norskeren trying to keep his team up, unbreakable for just a few more moments. Blank's going to get tickets. Behind, it's going to be Prophet. Jactroll picks up Memento. This fight is anyone's game right now as Skarl runs away in the midst of the fight. Prophet going through on the pool. Rooted up, Jiizuké takes down Norskeren. Everyone's low health bars, though, and Vitality, they're still doing it in this in the mid-game. Big shutdown gold going through, and there's the charge onto HeaQ to finish the fight. Cabochard, Jactroll, and Jiizuké sweeping it up.
You do not want to fight against Vitality in the mid-game. They will take it every single time, even when it looks like a horrific mistake. Kikis and Jactroll, I mean, they're underneath this turret. Roccat are like, what? You're serving it to us on a platter, but they disengage from the initial ultimate, and then when Blanc tries to put down the turret, it leaves him exposed to the initial charge there from Cabochard, and there's simply not enough damage at this point in the game for Roccat to deal with the rest of Vitality. Even though Prophet gets so much off into the backline, you'll notice that Cabochard gets some free hits here onto Prophet, which lets him remount and end up destroying them in the back half of this fight.
Yeah, that's the thing about Kled. Very deceptive on that health bar. You're never 100% sure if you're going to zero him out, and then HeaQ isolated means the end of it. So great trade for Vitality. They still find themselves up only about 1,000 gold, and you could see the big damage dealers in that fight. Roccat, I almost feel like that would have gone very different if Blanc had not used Emperor's Divide to try and get a pick.
Yeah, I mean, they could have disengaged. They could have kept them at range. That's typically what you want to do as Roccat against this Vitality composition. Unfortunately, they got a little bit blind to the fact that even though all he saw on their screen was 2 members, the rest of Vitality were quicker to pull the trigger on the rotation.
Talking a little bit about Kikis and what he's been able to do on this team. You see, typically, going into the enemy jungle is something that is considered quite risky, but Kikis don't care.
No,
he's the honey badger of junglers.
And the rest of Vitality is there to back him up. Roccat need to be a little bit nervous on this push, though, because Galio can try to clear the waves, and the Herald will still be going in the top side. Vitality could potentially actually get 2 turrets off this play.
And this is a much better Galio performance from Jiizuké today. Last time, it seemed like they wanted to force fights, didn't have enough damage to follow up. So they really kind of enhanced their composition. And credit to Vitality from kind of learning quickly from their mistakes and keeping it close in this game.
And during that push, of course, walk over, counter jungle away the blue buff from Memento. The level lead is the same between these 2 junglers, but the CS definitely is not. Kikis has been able to use his pressure constantly, and now as soon as Vitality are able to take down this 3rd and final outer turret, it's going to make it even that much more difficult for Memento to stop the invades.
Critically, Memento has been able to at least keep up in the gold game, and a lot of that is credit to how much Roccat are actually focusing on these objectives, right? Vitality, speaking of objectives, though, going to take an uncontested dragon. Ocean.
Yeah. I mean, if you actually look at the gold, the biggest difference is down in the bottom lane, where it's sitting at around 1,400 plus for Jactroll, who's actually managed to pick up 4 kills out of nowhere.
And we thought he was going to get bullied, like him and Attila.
Yeah.
It started that way because Memento just kind of showed up and said boogie, boogie, boogie.
But here's the difference. Instead of revisiting bottom lane when Memento hit level 6, he went up topside, which is a fine play. They got the kill for Profit on towards Cabochard, but they weren't able to snowball quite from there. They took that turret trade where Vitality were also able to tag on the Infernal Drake. And critically, remember, the Rift Herald had not spawned yet, so Roccat weren't able to trade there. That meant Vitality then got it a moment ago and were able to take yet another tower.
Looks like they got another taunt off onto Blanc, spends the Emperor's Divide, but he's already half health as Prophet arrives in the nick of time, but I don't know if they're going to be able to save the tower completely. Wave does get melted. Jiizuké, Cabochard don't want to go for it just yet. And Jiizuké can be a little more reckless on this. This is the type of champion that he definitely can afford to. His Rod of Ages at half stacks already. Not a lot of other items to speak of, but he's staying healthy in most of these fights.
It's funny, too, because I've never seen Galio E4 this recklessly as Jactroll is threatening on the flank at the moment, but Vitality are just continuing to poke out here towards Roccat while Attila gets this wave rolling on the top side of the map so they can try to collapse a few of these waves at the same moment and then break the mid lane turret once a couple members of Roccat go to other areas of the map to pick up those minions.
Okay, Norskeren contesting with Jactroll on a little bit of vision here. And you know, we heard about the way that this team does the calls, how it does kind of split a little bit with Prophet being the main shot caller in this team, stating that he wanted to make some plays happen up early top. You got to wonder, though, if this didn't kind of bite them in the behind a little bit as Vitality were able to react better. And they've been pushing their lead just a little bit ever since.
Yeah, the real mistake from Roccat has come from trying to take these fights against Vitality. We mentioned in the draft, this composition is built to fight between 15 and 25, 30 minutes, where they can just use all the base stats you get when you have all these melee champions, run straight on in with a fantastic engage of a Kled as well as a Rakan, and the scaling just hasn't quite caught up for Roccat to be allowed to go head-to-head in these fights.
Yeah, and you can see how strong Vitality are, obviously just watching the fights, but even in some of the items. After it looked like Cabochard might get shut down early on, well, guess what? He's got a Black Cleaver. He's living his best life at this point to combo with the Merc Treads. And everybody's actually not hurting for gold here. Kikis might be the one who's in items the furthest behind.
Yeah, it's pretty even across the board, just a couple hundred in the advantage for all these teams. His bottom lane Prophet's in trouble.
Okay, he's going to go pool, and it's going to be Darkness. Memento tries to turn this one around with the lights out here, but that's a lot of damage following through! And he gets deleted off the map before the rest of Roccat can even respond. Looks like we're in for a big old fight, though, right now, as they get the charm up, forcing the flash out of Norskeren. Trying to disengage here. Roccat realized they did not want that fight as Jiizuké takes down Prophet. HeaQ in the back, getting the full culling channel off it. Vitality might be a little bit caught between a rock and a hard place, but they're still going through.
There's still no Attila.
It's a shutdown. Attila hasn't even joined this fight, so Vitality actually stay way too long and get punished.
Little unfortunate there. HeaQ tried to back on over toward the side where the rest of his teammates were. I think they could have gotten a little bit more off of that fight because Attila had not teleported in.
Yeah, but Vitality still did win that fight. It was 1-for-2 trade, but it seemed really tense for just a moment. And with Attila not TPing, I wonder how that would have gone elsewise.
Yeah, right at the start of the fight, I don't think teleport was actually available there for Attila, and there's a lot of time bought out at the beginning, but Memento going in is a huge mistake because Prophet was in the pool. There was no one else to CC Kikis or Cabochard, so ended up making it a 4 versus 4 fight once HeaQ came in with this teleport. But in this situation, I think HeaQ's in a pretty good spot because Vitality have already spent the engage going in towards the rest of Roccat. Maybe if he'd stuck towards that inner turret, he could have pumped out a little bit more DPS and actually caught Jiizuké or Cabochard on their way out.
Yeah, slight uncertainties out of Roccat, and at the moment, remember what these guys are fighting for. Sole possession of 4th place, proving themselves not just in the middle of the pack, but a little bit above it. Vitality have to get back to it, but Roccat are working their way up to it for the first time in a long time.
First time in a long time, but they're sitting dead even with Vitality in the standings at the moment. Now, Vitality, usually when they're able to get leads in the early game, they can snowball that and just take out opponents later on into the game. And it has been a decent lead so far for them, 3,000, but usually when they're picking up their wins, they're snowballing that into much, much more earlier on.
Vitality's games have gone a little bit off the script as of late. We all remember what happened yesterday, a wild roller coaster of a ride against Giants. But at the moment, seem to be in the driver's seat, setting up themselves a death brush. And a lot of it's vision control. You can see we're only looking at Rocket's vision right now. This is starting to look a little scary as Vitality members closing in around the sides.
You know, the only reprieve here for Roccat as Norskeren has to get on out of there is the fact that Vitality's Baron DPS is relatively low. They don't have a traditional marksman in the bottom lane. Swain, Galio isn't going to be the highest amount of DPS, so even with limited vision, they should be relatively comfortable knowing that Vitality are going to be more hesitant to start up a Baron.
Well, they certainly can take the fights if you've been watching these ones, so if they peel that off a little bit faster. I was just realizing as they got the pillar and the never move up, this team has so much CC, it's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you want to do to pair alongside the Swain, and yeah, it's especially rough for someone like HeaQ who doesn't have the flash. Blanc now, too, does not have the flash, so they have to be especially careful whenever they face check a brush, which could happen very soon. This is the bush you see teams so often just camp inside of because you know Roccat has to eventually walk in.
Looks like the brush is coming to them, though. Vitality trying to find the fight, trying to find the play, but nobody presses the go button on ultimates. Cabochard holding on to that charge as Roccat were able to bait out a Vitality response, but it's a standoff in the mid lane.
Look at these side lanes, though. Roccat have massive waves built up, both top lane and bottom lane, so Vitality are really trying to force a fight, but if they don't pull the trigger fast enough and sit around here in the mid lane, they might end up losing out on a lot of that golden experience.
Yeah. In the meantime, they can, on the Roccat side, look to try and maybe contest on a dragon, but Vitality still forcing out as they see Attila going back up towards the top side to clear the wave there. And Prophet doing the same to push the wave in the bottom, so both teams opting for non-aggression for a change.
Yeah, we still have to keep looking at this timer here from Roccat. When do they come online? When are they going to start turning these fights in their favor? I think we're going to be looking at maybe plus 30 minutes here because right now, even though Blanc has his 2 core items, HeaQ as well, Prophet went very defensive in the setup. Zhonya's Hourglass plus the Hextech Proto Belt and Ninja Tabi's on top means that his AoE teamfight damage is going to be significantly less than the Rabadon's Death Cap Rush plus just all the AP you can build in the world that we've typically seen.
Someone's got to go defensive on this team. Come on, Andrew. You look at the Dustblade of Drakthar build now with
Give me
Memento.
a Spellbinder.
Yeah, a Spellbinder. Okay, sure. But Prophet still has time to build those. He's still got item slots. Yes, it's going to be a little while. But Roccat, the gold lead is no longer getting away from them at this point. The dragon lead, on the other hand, is something I would be a little concerned about considering that Mountain Drake went down for free.
Yeah, especially when Vitality have such good control over the Baron. Actually has slipped a bit when they went over to secure themselves that objective. Of course, this is how the game is sort of spun out of control here for Roccat. They actually had the lead off of the plays of Memento. The issue was, again, taking those fights as Vitality looked for another.
Oh, Prophet, he might be caught out a little bit. Throws on a 2-man Hemo Plague and goes for the pool away. HeaQ and Norskeren are coming. I don't know if it's going to last that long, but the teleport on the opposite side is coming through. HeaQ and Norskeren feel that they don't want this fight anymore. The charge unstoppable as Cabochard looks for Norskeren. Attila throws on his own ultimate, and it looks like we're in for the fights once again, but Vitality don't find the quick pick they're looking for. Memento zoning Jactroll away, or is it the rest of Vitality zoning Memento away? Looking for that damage right now as the pocket pistol pushes the Kled back. Nobody dies.
Very tense situation, though. Multiple flashes being blown on the side of Roccat to disengage from that fight. Vitality are going to take that as a victory for now, knowing that the next time Prophet overextends in a side lane, that's when they'll be able to pick up a kill.
Yeah, 2 summoners for a teleport on Attila's side and Cabochard as well. And now Vitality making tracks up towards the Baron. Are they going to start the bait out? Prophet has TP. He's the one in the bottom lane. It looks like they're going to go for it, at least to bait in Roccat.
Well, they will not take much damage from starting this up. They really just want to force a fight. They want to force Roccat to enter through one of those tight corridors for the engage, but there's no ultimates on their side. Roccat only have the Emperor's Divide left for Blanc, so I think both teams are going to go back and lick their wounds and wait for those cooldowns to come back.
You can see the Vitality are not as confident as they were before. They peeled off very quickly, and as a result, actually, it looks like they're going to lose their mid tower. So this will even up the tower game and put Roccat in touching distance of the gold.
That's very important, too, because when you are trying to get into that Baron area, trying to have mid lane priority, having the minions shoving in your favor is very important, because as soon as those go into turret, 1 or 2 members of Vitality will have to go back, and now that the turret's been pushed back further away from the Baron, that's longer distance to cover, and there's more of a window of opportunity for Roccat to get vision around that Baron area whenever they're able to push in the wave.
So I know, Ender, you wanted to see some more aggressive items, offensive items being built by Prophet. Well, there's an Oblivion Orb in the inventory. You getting excited yet?
I'm excited, but I'm a little nervous at the same time because flat magic penetration is very good against targets with no MR. And to his benefit right now, there's very little magic resist on the side of Vitality, but when you have all these bruisers, I'm expecting a lot of magic resistance to come through, and Void Staff is going to be vital in the next few minutes for him to pick up.
Alrighty. Roccat, 27 minutes now on the clock. The game is still 2,500, give or take, in favor gold-wise for Vitality, but we're closing in on that time when Roccat will be a little stronger to fight. Prophet does get pulled in. The never move, forcing out the pool. Roccat looked to collapse, but in goes Jactroll as well. And they've gotten in. Vitality are going to try and delete Prophet off the map, but he's going to go golden for just a couple more seconds before finally falling into the back. Goes Memento. Can they turn the fight this way? Kikis taking up the front line. Everyone flashing forward. He goes gold as well. It's all about those stopwatches, but that's a double kill for Attila, and the fight shifts back once again. Roccat just out of range to try and find any more. It's a 2-for-1. Vitality come out ahead.
Vitality keep taking these fights and keep pulling away with the victories right there. Jactroll sacrifices himself for the engage, but Vitality are going to continue to look.
Emperor's Divide. Blanc shifts himself out. No Eye of Sauron for him today, and Vitality may finally be in a position to start contesting the Baron.
There's 15 seconds left on Memento, but there's only 8 on Prophet, who has teleport up and ready. So starting this up would be a very risky move out of Vitality, especially with Cabochard sitting relatively low. Even though Vitality are winning these fights, the gold lead is still only 3,000. It has been for the last 10 or so minutes, and that is certainly an advantage over to Roccat the longer the game lasts.
It's such a weird thing to think about, that Vitality are winning the fights, but Roccat may be winning the game, because this isn't Roccat at their full strength. This is the training montage in like 10 times normal gravity. It's going to be a little while. I know you haven't seen DBZ yet. You really should.
Nope.
It's going to be like several weeks of investment, but I'm going to try to keep dropping these references until you get them.
Maybe I just never will, Pyra. Did you ever think of that?
No, just don't care. All right, tell me through this fight again.
Yeah, here's the engage from Cabochard again. Just as soon as Jactroll's on the way, they coordinate the engage fantastically. For a while, though, it looked like Roccat were almost going to be able to turn it around when Memento dove into the backline and bought time. The issue is the low range of Azir and Lucian meant that they couldn't actually finish forward onto Kikis and return those couple of kills.
Looks like back in the live, Norskeren gets face checked in on. He gets a 3-man Glacial Fissure, but Jactroll even looking for more, gets shoved back by the Emperor's Divide as Blanc dodges out just in time from the Jiizuké damage. Prophet on the wrong side of this fight. It looks like Vitality split attention. Can't quite find HeaQ, but they do delete Blanc, and HeaQ's finally going to fall. That's 2 quick kills over to Vitality once again. Let's see what else they can get off of this one. Chasing down Prophet. No pool for him, and no flash for a few seconds either. But Vitality give up for the time being.
I mean, you'd think Roccat would learn eventually. You don't want to keep going down mid.
And they find Memento, this time nowhere for him to go, deleted off the map, and if this isn't Baron time, I don't know what is, Ender.
That should be enough to break this game wide open. The rest of Vitality heads on over towards the Baron, and every single time it is Cabochard and Jactroll pressing those R buttons, running straight into the center of the Roccat team, getting those massive AoEs off.
All right, so finally, relatively risk-free Baron at the 30-minute mark. This is about where we pegged Roccat to start being able to take these fights, but it didn't quite happen. Not just yet. Some of the prioritization on the damage, not nearly enough perhaps, but Vitality, the ones pulling the trigger, and they gain the spoils of war.
How does this actually happen? I believe it's Norskeren walking forward into this brush. There's 3 people there, and the rest of Roccat are there with him because they know a play like this is going to happen. Unfortunately, just doesn't work out. They get engaged on Blanc, gets split away from the rest of his team, and there's just not quite enough upfront damage from the rest of Roccat to win out in this fight. The sustained DPS, the unkillable front line of Vitality just continues to chase them down.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a Ferrari comp. They just roll at you 0 to 60, and if you're not getting out of the way, you're getting run over, and we saw that right here. Vitality, everyone doing their part for the damage. Really got to give some credit to the CC chain, Cabochard, Jactroll, really doing their work to set these fights, these picks up.
And remember that Vitality intentionally let the Nocturne get through. First pick from Memento, and all of a sudden they draft 4 melee champions, 4 tanks up against this Nocturne. The only champion he can assassinate is a Rakan, and that's just not going to do it.
And you add to that Kikis basically made Memento's life a living hell for the first 10 minutes of this game, and you can see why he's having some struggles.
I mean, this could be a very pivotal moment in the actual metagame of the ULCS if teams realize how to actually play against this Nocturne, draft compositions, draft specific picks, and then play towards those strengths. Maybe this doesn't have to be a permanent red side ban anymore.
Well, it could certainly shift the balance of power just a little bit. And for Vitality, they're hoping to shift perceptions. This is a team that's had some struggles. Getting this win right now would not only boost their spirits, but boost their chances, holding 4th place alone for the time being would be a huge boon to this team who had slightly fallen out of favor. Let's see if Roccat can hold the line here with the Baron push coming.
The difficulty for Vitality now is actually closing out the game because they only have one ranged champion and it's a Swain, so actually auto-attacking and sieging down these turrets will be difficult. That being said, Vitality could probably just go ahead and straight up dive under these towers. We've seen them do it so far in this game. But I want to bring it back almost to that week 2 match where Vitality were in a very similar situation and threw in this same exact area. Roccat are going to have to try to pull off some miracle now.
I'll see if Lightning will strike twice. It was up to Prophet and Blanc the last time around, but there will be no follow-up fight here. The first inhibitor is going to fall in the top lane. Vitality, 5-man unit, just keeps on going.
With that inhibitor down, should make it much easier to break open this space. Minions in the bottom lane, not quite in Vitality's favor, and the rest of Roccat have their summoners up. If Prophet wants to find a flank, now could be the time to do it, but gonna have to try and clear away these minion waves somehow. You do not want to give over 2 inhibitors.
Here's the start. It looks like they want the fight right now. It looks like HeaQ and Blanc out of harm's way, but the tower and the rest of Vitality maybe not so lucky to get the taunt up and delete Prophet. That could be the difference maker. Rooting up HeaQ, he dashes away, but that is going to be 1 dead tower and 1 dead inhibitor. Vitality making use of this Baron buff. 20 seconds still left, and they've got 2 inhibs.
Vitality just don't take any damage. They go under the turrets with reckless abandon, find kills, and come out with full HP bars. Look at this build on Jiizuké.
Yeah, you're talking about reckless abandon. That's a Magi Soul Stealer.
10 stacks on the Magi's, a Rabadon's in there as well, and just see how this fight starts off. The pillar slows down both carries on the side of Roccat, lets everyone else get underneath the turret, but Memento and Blanc, they can't hit anyone in this fight. Prophet is stuck out to dry. Just 5 members of Vitality whacking down onto that Vladimir.
Yeah, so could they close the game? The answer gets a little easier now, Ender. I mean, it's obviously always a chance that these guys can lose a big fight. Roccat have turned around crazier games, but it's 10,000 gold difference at 34 minutes into this game. They have every dragon. They had the Baron, which is now gone, but it doesn't really matter when the base of Roccat is as well.
Yeah, Vitality can basically just come down into this bottom lane, wait for the minion waves in mid and top to crash on down, but Vitality isn't a team that's very keen on waiting. They're a team that wants to just fight, dive underneath these turrets, and end the game as quickly as possible. And frankly, we're probably going to see that on, if not this wave, the next.
We'll see if this is the final push or not. Vitality stated Roccat has been their kryptonite in the past. Let's see if they can turn that around, make it 2-2 in the head-to-head on the year. But of course, it is a long series, or a long season still ahead. Vitality, though, would be very happy to get themselves in that 4th place position. Good wave clear from the Roccat side. Here's the fight. Will they be able to do it? That's a big old Hemo Plague, and it's darkness. Vitality getting some redemption here as well, turning back over to Prophet. Getting the damage. Cabochard, he's found the kill onto Blanc, and the Vitality switch is flipped. HeaQ trying to get a deletion off, but it's not going to happen. Target disengaged and re-engaged, pocket pistols and everything flying. And it looks like Vitality are going to go for the end of the game.
This composition Yamato cannon built could not lose in the mid-game, and they're going to take this one home.
Big old hero's entrance for Jiizuké, and for Vitality this game, the Roccat is in the bag.
All right, Vitality, I'm liking what I see. These mid-game teamfight compositions drafting exactly how they want to play out the game, and executing on it just about perfectly.
For Vitality, they took the mid-game into the late game. They just never stopped the train.
They never slow down.
That's what I love about watching this team. Never give up. And even when things looked a bit even, things looked a little rough in the early stages, held their heads high, and as a result, well-earned victory.
And with that, could very well be jumping up to 4th place alone at the end of the week. Of course, they will be holding that until the match between Sjokz and G2 later today. For a team that seemed to be struggling a bit in the last few weeks, they bring in Kikis, find 2 consecutive wins out of him in the jungle, and what a way to show up back into the LCS too, invading constantly into one of the most praised junglers in the LCS, and having your team right there to support you.
Yeah. Maybe this was the slight ignition they needed just to mix things up. And, you know, we'll see if Gilius makes a return as well. Kikis didn't seem to have any issues communication-wise with them. Fitting into a team, especially mid-split, is never going to be easy. But raw skill certainly counts for quite a lot, and he has infused it into this Vitality team.
And all these teams, Roccat, Vitality, all still in that race here for playoffs, especially Roccat still going to be in the mix. But of course, you don't want to be dropping games against these teams right neck and neck with you in the standings. Vitality are going to be very happy that they were able to come out on top here and try to inch themselves away from that 5th, 6th place.
Yeah, and everything can really change at the drop of a hat at this point, because you've got Splice sitting at 5 and 6. That's now only 1 win less than what Roccat have. You could easily find yourself out of playoffs. So it's tough, man. You've only got a few more weeks to make it count, but Roccat, they gave it all they got this game. Just wasn't enough.
Every game matters, man. Every game matters.
It's almost like we used that once or twice. Now, you guys are deciding the player of the game, which of course stands between Kikis, Attila, and Jactroll. So give us your vote at LOL Esports on Twitter. I'm not even going to ask you because I always do anyway. So, that's it from us. We're going to, for more on Vitality's win, let's check in with Laure and the support.
Thanks, Pyra, and thanks, Jactroll, for joining me on stage. So I'm wondering, you guys chose a hard engaged composition, even though you had issues defining your style lately, and you went with Rakan, Galio, Kled. So can you explain a bit more?
It just everything collected together, It's my first ever game with Rakan in competitive, and I'm really happy with my performance today. What can I say more about the comp?
Why did you think that fit today? This one fitted today?
Just
confidence?
I think it's not about we go to the game and we know the comp that we play already. We just take champions that fit good in that exact scenario. It's not something that we prepare and it's 100% this,
Awesome. Well, yesterday I talked to Kikis, obviously, and I want your opinion on this. How different is it from Galio's in-game? What's the difference between those two?
In-game, it's not much different because they are both leaders. But the playstyle is a little bit different, and just because we played with Kikis these 2 games, it doesn't mean that we gave up on Gilius. He's still a really important member of our team, and I'm sure that we'll see him more in LCS.
And we'll see.
With Vitality, of course.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we'll see over the weeks. Thank you for joining me at this second. We're going to take a short break. Right after, it's going to be UOL versus Giants. Don't go anywhere.
You know what, Laure? They keep feeding you misinformation. It's still us for a little bit. Wonderful interview.
We are the break.
We are the break. I mean, a lot of people turn off when they see us anyway, so I guess that goes. Wonderful interview with Jactroll. He was feeling cheerful. First time Rakan, which I think is nice seeing how that game played out, because it was all about the engage and it was all about the team composition. So let's dive straight in and look at the team fights, because honestly, that is what it was all about. 11 minutes in, Vitality did what they do best, go mid lane.
I mean, this team fight started being really good for Roccat, but so far the team comp of Roccat, I don't really understand. Nocturne is a completely bait for Vitality. Here, whenever Nocturne goes in, he's just gonna straight die. So he pops his ultimate to not even enter the team fight. So it's a win team fight for Vitality.
Yeah, it's kind of strange watching an Azir plus an AD carry who are, consistent DPS. We want to have long team fights where we're standing back, we're kiting, there's a Braum protecting them. And then there's Memento is press ult on Nocturne and it never wants to go in.
It looks like it was a bit of a panic because they hadn't scaled enough to do damage themselves. So whenever Vitality did something, he was just like, all right, darkness, and maybe I can negate some of the damage, but that doesn't really help you because you end up dying after.
Right, exactly. And I think Yamada Cannon and Vitality over the last couple of weeks have kind of tried a lot of different drafts, a lot of different kind of compositions, where if you look at the one yesterday, they ran also with the Galio mid, but it was a Tahm Kench support. It was a Kindred support. So it was very we want to sit back now, but then Galio didn't really fit in. This, I think they nailed the draft today. And this is the best Vitality draft we've seen in a couple of weeks, because it was all in, all of it. Swain going in, Trundle in the front line.
And at the same time, this is the kind of composition they're running right now in Korea, where we talked yesterday about how they let Nocturne open these last weeks on Korea, because they can build these kind of comps. They just go all brushers, all tanks, and there is not a single target that Nocturne can go in and kill. So who are you going to ultimate? Swain, Kled, Galio, they're all
tried the Rakan, and that's it.
It's just impossible to go in.
Let's take a look at another example of that exactly. An insane bottom lane fight for Vitality, brought to you by Acer Predator, which actually starts as an engage by Roccat. But what you just said right now, is here in action. Vitality can turn it around. The Nocturne Darkness doesn't really do anything, and in that moment, they can re-engage and just slaughter Roccat.
I mean, first of all, they missed these two ultimates because Nocturne ultimate was for nothing, Azir ultimate was also for nothing, so now they're gonna teamfight without the lack of these two main ultimates, and they have no teamfight composition. They need Azir to scale, they need Azir to do damage, they also need Lucian to scale as well, and they cannot do this because they are fighting early game when they should not be fighting.
Looking at it again, though, it was a bit closer than I remembered.
The next ones will be more one-sided.
Turn it around. But that's when we get to that composition, right? A fantastic team fighting comp from the side of Vitality, and not the right tools built against it from Roccat. We often say Memento have one style, and you said very actively yesterday, I like it. I want Memento and Roccat to play that one active style, and that is not Nocturne.
So don't pick stupid Azir as well. That's all late game scaling. I need early game fighting from Roccat. I need a jungler that can gank in the early game, that can go mid lane or top lane and get a kill for a strong pick. Azir is right now, if you ask any mid lane in Europe, a champion that is very weak early game, but of course still has the strong late game, but that's the trade-off. You give up the early parts of the game, yet they pick it. So that part I didn't like. I don't think that's the reason they lost, because I think there was actually still moments where they could play, but this Vitality draft just made it so hard, and you get punished for every mistake you made.
As a possibly dumb question from my part, yesterday I saw a Nocturne do insane early game moves against Schalke and HeaQ with Orianna, who is also a controlling yet bit scaling.
I like Nocturne if you just draft a mid laner who wants to dive in.
So that's the issue.
Yeah, give me a mid laner who wants to dive with Vladimir plus Nocturne. It's still not perfect against the full tank comp, but then I can see the Nocturne makes sense.
Well, I was talking to Oliver during the game, and he said he hates Nocturne as an early game champion. No,
I'm not talking about early game, I'm just talking about fighting.
Okay.
Yesterday, what happened with Fnatic, that Nocturne actually killed someone level 2, you will never see that happen.
That shouldn't happen.
You will never see that happen. That's completely early game, but it's Sen allowing that by the first gang, wasting the flash of Yasuo and then Orianna pushing it, and then Nocturne doing the dive. But that should never ever happen. Like, there is a lot of early game champions. Taliyah is one of the best early game junglers. Trundle is one of the best early game junglers, and then you have champions like Nocturne, who is completely late game. You have Sejuani, that is mid game. Like, early game is fine, mid game is really strong, late game is really strong, and then you have something like Kindred that scales a lot. Early game can be strong, but he needs his marks. So it's something like that. But Nocturne is the worst early game jungle right now in the metagame.
So if you have Nocturne in this game, because we're not talking about early late game jungle, we're talking about how does it fit with the Azir in terms of fighting, right?
Yeah.
So what mid laner, if you look at the rest of the draft from Roccat, if you were the coach, we would have said, okay, if I pick, random example, the Galio myself here, I have Galio, Vladimir plus Nocturne, I'm happy then with the team fight, at least.
I mean, so far, every single time I played versus Galio, I tried to put that some 80 damage. So you can pick, for example, the Corki. That is a champion that is coming back to the meta with the rework or the buff on the E. Corki is really good into Galio. Then you can pick some other mages, but you're looking for a mage that can go in. Like, really mages that can press a Galio early game and can go in after something like Ryze, something like
Sandra, man, where's it at?
No.
Come on, that's been buffed like 10 times. It's soon going to be strong.
It's going to be there. Well, to wrap this up, though, Vitality had the advantage, had a wonderful team fight comp, and 29 minutes in, they win another fight, they go for Baron, and they basically wrap up the game.
It's just so perfect now, because you're going to have Engage from Rakan that sets up the Galio ult, unlike yesterday when there was nothing to set it up, and then you have also Kled ult to just constantly run at people, and you can see the damage. Like, HeaQ is actually trying his hardest, but he's on an AD carry that's behind, and you can't kill Brutus fast enough.
Well, if we step back now, that is a 2-0 week for Vitality. The player of the game, can you guess once again?
Is it Kikis
Kikis,
again?
I will say, right?
Yesterday it was with 70-something% of votes. This time it is 56% of the votes.
I mean, his early game was amazing. Like, he pressured Memento all the early game, just stealing his camps, going to the Wolves, pushing him away and taking them. Every single camp, he's so far going into enemy jungle, he was getting it. So I think his early game was really good, but I think also that his team support him all the time, because we have Kled roaming to him, we have Galio all the time, constantly moving to him, so I think it was so far the team.
You already know what I'm going to ask you. I said it yesterday when Kikis got player of the game, and they won. They now get a 2-0 week. Yamato's change worked.
It definitely worked. Very positive change also from day 1 to day 2. You can then argue as the draft or whatever, but Vitality looked much better today in team fights. Kikis currently is the change they needed. A week of scrims, Galio is playing next week?
This is so interesting. Like what we see now that they move up to 4th place. Of course, Sjokz is still playing later. They take an absolutely crucial win here, and Roccat go 1-1 once again. So this might turn out to be the most
stupid Roccat 1-on-1.
Yeah,
we all predicted him.
I will never bet. I will never bet again for Roccat.
No,
if I see first game winning, I'm gonna bet like all my money to the lose for the second round.
So interesting. So interesting.
I guess you're starting Kikis next week. Based on what happened this week.
If you're the coach, you start him next week, indeed. And then is when that dynamic becomes really interesting. But we will have to ask some of the members ourselves.
Of course.
But I think from a coach perspective, now what you can do, so far you see Kikis is working out. Right now is the moment that you can try both. Like couple of games with Kikis, couple of games with Galio, and you can even decide. Probably Kikis can be better early game. Probably Galio can be better mid to late game. So then you decide, like, what team are we playing against? If you're playing a late game comp or a late game team, we're going to use Galio, because maybe he's shot call better. I'm just predicting stuff, you know, like I have no idea inside, but you can decide between each other. So I'm not gonna say it's gonna be 100% Kikis, because now they can decide, because Kikis works, and I think Galio in the past was working as well.
Kikis top lane.
The Kikis top lane. I mean, they could still throw out a little flex. Cabochard plays a mage. In any case, psychologically within the team, I mean, you give something up, right? You have this now in your back pocket. You can change the jungler, but you deal with the interpersonal relationships that also rise from having a sub for a star player all of a sudden. Interesting.
Galio is happy now.
Galio
they got a
is happy.
2-0. They are much closer to playoffs. They were always dropping out of the top 6, and now they're back number 4.
Well, Galio, tweet at us how you feel. We'd like to know.
He's
Coming
happy.
up next, another crucial game in the race for playoffs. Giants versus the Unicorns of Love. See you back here in 3.5.
Cabochard has to be careful though, because Memento is hanging around.
Level 6.
That paranoia.
And here we go. Goes in on it. Pops the Scarlet. Immediately forces the flash, the pocket pistol. That's not going to save you, my friend. And it's first blood. And that is another taunt. Memento blown to pieces. Prophet trying to make something out of nothing.
Just one
Jiizuké finally is going to fall. It ends up being a 2-for-1 trade. Norskeren trying to keep his team up unbreakable for just a few more moments. Blank's going to get tickets. Behind it's going to be Prophet. Jactroll picks up Memento. This fight is anyone's game. Finally falling into the back. Goes Memento. Can they turn the fight this way? Kikis taking up the front line. Everyone flashing forward. He goes gold as well. It's all about those stopwatches, but that's a double kill for Attila. But Prophet on the wrong side of this fight. It looks like Vitality split attention. Can't quite find HeaQ, but they do delete Blanc, and HeaQ's finally going to fall. That's 2 quick kills. Big old hero's entrance for Jiizuké, and for Vitality this game, the Roccat is in the bag.